is the sage's putra, son, ati, extremely, tejasvi, powerful, viharan, while playing, with boys, arbakai, who are all childish, ragya, by the king, agam, distress, prapitam, made to have, tatam, the father, shutva, by hearing, tatra, then and there, idam, this, abravit, spoke. Translation. The sage had a son who was very powerful, being a Brahmana's son. While he was playing with inexperienced boys, he heard of his father's distress, which was occasioned by the king. Then and there, the boy spoke as follows. Translation, again, I'll say you please repeat. The sage had a son who was very powerful. Being a Brahmana's son. While he was playing with inexperienced boys, he heard of his father's distress, which was occasioned by the king. Then and there, the boy spoke as follows. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Due to Parikshit Maharaj's good government, even a boy of tender age, who was playing with other inexperienced boys, could become as powerful as a qualified Brahmana. This boy was known as Shringi, and he achieved good training in brahmacharya by his father, so that he could be as powerful as a Brahmana, even at that age. But because of the age of Kali, was seeking an opportunity to spoil the cultural heritage of the four orders of life, the inexperienced boy gave a chance for the age of Kali to enter into the field of Vedic culture. Hatred of the lower orders of life began from this Brahmana boy under the influence of Kali, and thus cultural life began to dwindle day after day. The first victim of Brahminical injustice was Maharaja Parikshit, and thus the protection given by the king against the onslaught of Kali was slackened. Om Jnana Timirandasya Giranjana Slakaya Chakshuru Militamina Tasmai Shri Gurve Namaha. Shri Chaitanyamano Vistam Savitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupakadam Yam Vidat Swapadantikam. We were born in the darkness of ignorance, but a spiritual master has kindly forced to open our eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. Therefore we offer up most humble and respectful obeisance to his lotus feet. Maom Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasad Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pachadane Nirvasesha Sunyavani Pascha Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Radha Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare Vancha Kalpatri Vishya Kripasun Vivacha Patitana Bhavaneyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha. So here in this verse it is explaining the power of good leadership and also the power of association. Prabhupada is explained here by the good leadership of Maharaj Parikshit, whose duty as the king was to ensure that all the orders of life were following their duties. Because the Varnashram system is meant for elevating the whole human society. Just like when we are interested in our health, we want to make sure that we have health for the whole body, not that we just care about a little part of the body. We want to make sure we're totally healthy, holistic health care. So similarly, the king is responsible to see that the whole society is raised up to reach the goal of life, which is to reunite on a spiritual platform with the divine. Mm-hmm. So by good government, by good leadership, people are directed almost effortlessly into the goal of life. Combined, and that, of course, good leadership creates good association. Because if everyone around you is doing the right thing, how much easier it is for you to do the right thing. So Maharaj Parikshit's good government enabled the Brahmins, the priestly class, to be very powerful, and were able to transfer their power almost effortlessly, even to their own children, who had began the practice. Now, we studied a little bit the next verse. So that was one of the points, was that in the Varnashram system that was eventually perverted in the sense of the caste system, that things were based on body. Prabhupada actually mentioned that the class system is scientific and it's natural. In other words, if you're born into a family of Brahmins or a family of doctors or engineers, there's a good possibility that you might take up the career of your father. Of course, nowadays, the Kali Yuga, that there's so much traveling and the nuclear family or the extended family is completely broken apart. People end up doing their own thing, pursuing their own path. But former culture, you were with your family, so that was your association. And the principle of association is you become like who you associate with automatically. So in one sense, the idea of taking birth in a family of Brahmins and becoming a Brahmin, but it was natural, but it wasn't exclusive, because the ultimate essence of the Varnashram system is based on quality and work. So Prabhupada said when he was in India, sometimes he'd see these people wearing Brahmin threads, and they'd be, pulling carts like a donkey, big carts full of wood or something. They're wearing a Brahmin thread, but they're doing Sudra work. So that doesn't exactly jive just because you're born in a Brahmin family. So like that. So by association, one is transformed. We've seen it in the Krishna consciousness movement. Practically speaking, young people or even old people come off the street leading a life completely devoid of spiritual culture, breaking the four principles of human life, which we know the four pillars of sinful life: no meat eating, no illicit sex, no gambling, no intoxication. When Prabhupada came to America, he was shocked to see the degradation. At the same time, he had a plan. He had a plan. And what was his plan? His plan was not even to tell people about the four principles, because when his godbrother went to England and he met a very high-class person, the Lord of Zetland, and the Lord of Zetland was very intelligent, and he inquired, "Can you make me a Brahmin?" Prabhupada's godbrother said, "Yes. Very easy." "Really? How?" He thought it was some ceremony. He said, "Just follow these principles. No meat eating, no illicit sex, no gambling, no intoxication." And what was Lord Zetland's reply? "Impossible." No way. Forget that program. So when Prabhupada came to America, he didn't even talk about the four regular principles. What did he do? He gave higher taste. He gave the holy name. He had faith in the holy name. He gave the holy food, Krishna Prasad. And he let that work on the heart. And when there began to become a higher taste, then he introduced. Now, you've got some taste. If you want to go higher, if you want to experience more, these principles are necessary to bring us up. So, spiritual culture, this whole section here is talking about spiritual culture. So, the basis of culture is respect. The higher the culture, the greater respect there is given to greater proportions of the universe, the creation, isn't it? What does Lord Chaitanya say about respect? Shikshastika prayers. One should be. Oh, there she is. We have it ready. What is it? Expect none in return. Offer all respects to others. So that's spiritual culture. So here we're talking about the situation that occurred between Maharaj Parikshit and the Muni, right? Maharaj Parikshit, in an instant of, it just took an instant. It was an instant of inattention or becoming overwhelmed with a material quality, thirst in this case, and desire for respect. And when the sage, the Muni, was in trance, he didn't offer any respect. And then Maharaj Parikshit retaliated by throwing a snake around his neck as a sign. I'll show you. You showed me no respect. I'll show you no respect. That was the beginning. Of course, that was arranged by Krishna, but that was the beginning of the fall of Kali Yuga, to increase this disrespect between orders of life, and eventually, as Kali Yuga progresses, the respect for everything becomes lessened and less and less, to the point where that's respect is the foundation of culture, even ordinary mundane culture. So respect for authority, respect for parents, respect for spiritual master, respect for scriptures, respect for customs, respect for others' feelings. These things disappear, and this is the starting point. And Shringi, he thought, you've disrespected me, I will disrespect you, and I will curse you to die within 7 days. So this is how the conflagration of human relationships can sometimes devolve because of the need for respect. In a spiritual culture, everyone is giving respect. Offer all respects to others. And therefore, the need for respect is automatically fulfilled because everyone around you is offering respect. But in material culture, everyone wants respect and nobody's giving respect. That is very needy kind of situation. And then everything follows. What Prabhupada says, the cultural life began to decline day after day. So generally, children, by nature, they don't have an understanding of respect. They have to be taught how to respect. And that's what the parents' job is, to teach them how to respect authority, culture. And here we have also, I was also reflecting on the need to respect even the dead. I remember in Bhagavad Gita there's a verse, the wise lament neither for the living nor the dead, right? But at one point, I think the devotees misunderstood that. We don't lament for the living or the dead, but it doesn't mean we don't respect even the dead. And there was some misunderstanding how to treat dead bodies. Oh, it's just a dead body? Of course, from Scripture, what is the destination of the body? What's one destination of the body? Yeah. Dirt, compost, what else? Huh? Food? Food for dogs, yes. Which food comes, all good food turns to what? Stool, yeah. Stool, dust, what's the other one? Ashes, right? That's a destination of the body. But still, culture means to respect even the dead. And to respect those who are affected by death. We've been studying the Nectar of Devotion, come these 64 principles. One of the principles is like when somebody sees a dead body or there's a death in the family, there's like a 14-day period and they're not even allowed to go and associate in a temple. Not so much as a temple, but I think it has to do with grieving, that period of grief and understanding how to deal with a sorrowful situation. That's culture. So respecting the living, respecting the dead, respecting animals, respecting insects. Like Prabhupada said that the famous story from Magari the hunter, when Magari was transformed and Narada and Parvat Muni came to see, Magari was this vicious hunter, and when he was transformed, he came to offer respects to Narada and Parvat Muni. He was doing this strange dance, And Parvat, friends with Narada, he goes, "Hey, what's up with your disciple? What's he doing? It's the weirdest thing I ever seen anybody do." And then I said, "Well, we'll have to ask him." When Parvat said, "So, Magrari, what were you doing?" I said, "Oh, I was going on a way to pay obeisances to my spiritual master and his godmother, and there were so many ants in the way. I had to avoid stepping on the ground where the ants were in order to not kill them." So his heart was transformed by the association. And he was a mature transcendentalist. And here we're talking about Shringi. Even though he had Brahminical power, he was not mature. And he wasn't mature, and therefore he did not respect. He lost respect for the king. And then in this next verse, you'll find out that he was so respectful that he started even using names. What do you call him? A watchdog. He's called Mars Brixton. He's simply a watchdog and a crow. Name calling is the ultimate. Name calling is not the ultimate. It is one of the features of abuse or disrespect. There's different levels of disrespect. This was brought out when Bhrigu Muni was sent to test the demigods to see who was supreme. He tested Lord Brahma by having a mental offense, and Lord Shiva by having a verbal offense, and Lord Vishnu by having a physical offense. He kicked Lord Vishnu in the chest, and he was testing whoever's the most tolerant, that must be the supreme. And even that tolerance is also not just used to measure who is God, but who is measured to be a great man, right? Tam statik, Krishna gives us instruction in the beginning of Bhagavad Gita. Tam statik svasabarta. One must learn to tolerate heat, cold, happiness, distress, honor, dishonor. And this ability to tolerate difficult circumstances is the qualification for gaining the mercy of the Lord. Especially if one is on the mission, of course, not just learning to tolerate, because so many great souls have tolerated so many things according to according to the art of transcending the material body, yogis would go and bathe in ice cold water and sit there meditating. So cold. Radha Swami tells a story about how they went to the source of the Ganges, Gangotri, called, right? And he brought a bunch of devotees, and then it was time for Gayatri. So it's time to chant the prayers. And so he decided, I'm going to chant prayers while bathing. This is a standard operating procedure. You could bathe in the Ganges. It's nice when you go to Mayapur, bathe in the Ganges, and you get out your Brahmins, right, and you chant. And while you're bathing in the Ganges, a lot of Brahmins do that. But Radha Swami was telling us that, yeah, I'm going to bathe in the Gangotri where the water is coming out from the glacier and chant my Gayatri. He said, and I went in, and I started chanting Gayatri, and it became the fastest Gayatri mantra I ever chanted in my life. Boom! Immediately, it was so painful, the cold. But yogis, they practice putting themselves in very difficult circumstances to tolerate cold or heat. Standing, burning. You make bonfires on four sides. They put bonfires on four sides of them on high noon. Light those bonfires and sit and meditate. You can imagine how hot that gets, like practically being in an oven. And that's how they learn to tolerate, so to transcend the identification with the material body. Realize, I am a spirit soul. Whatever happens to the body is no big deal. But that type of practice does not guarantee one is going to reach the goal. The goal is love. So love is developed when one becomes absorbed in the mission of the Lord. Because the mission of the Lord is to spread love. So when one becomes absorbed in the mission of the Lord, and along the way tolerates all kinds of disturbances, that kind of tolerance is the benediction. The benediction is to be absorbed in that same spirit of the Lord, which is love of God. And love for all. It's not just love of God. But Krishna says, when one knows the truth, he knows that all living beings are in me. I am of the God. What is it? What is it? All living beings are in me. They're part and parcel, So when you love God, you automatically love all living beings. So that is the gift, right? Tadvidi paripatena pariprasthena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnaninas tatadarchan. Try to learn the truth by approaching the spiritual master. Inquire, render service. The self-realized soul will impart knowledge unto you because you've seen the truth. So that knowledge, the ultimate knowledge is love. The ultimate knowledge is being filled with love. What is the use of knowledge if we don't gain love? When we understand Krishna's nature, then so like that. So the boys, they couldn't. The inexperienced boys, even though he gained the power, he didn't have the wisdom. So gaining power, gaining knowledge, gaining control, gaining authority has value if it's mixed with wisdom and love. Otherwise, it simply becomes a disturbance. So Maharaj Parikshit, as the ideal king, he had knowledge, he had power, he had authority, but he was a pure devotee. It was all mixed with love. So he was always acting for the welfare of others. This is the symptom that one has developed love. One is acting for the welfare of others. And it's hard to always act like that. But we have examples, and we have to become inspired by those examples and association. And that way, we can make progress as a society. So the point this verse is making, go back to the beginning, that good leadership and good association, one can develop almost naturally, almost effortlessly, and carried along. Just like if you're in a creek, a river, and it's going along, and it happens to be going along in the direction you want to go, you just get out there and float. And you're floating along and you reach your destination with practically hardly even swimming. So in the same way, when we get in this proper association, we can be carried along practically effortlessly. And we see people come to Krishna consciousness, and in the right association, it makes so much advancement so quickly. So I'll stop here for today. Any questions or comments? Yes, sir. What about Ru?
Thank you, Babu, for inviting me. Class. Someone could argue or say that if Maharaj Parikshit was really concerned with the welfare of others, then why would he agree to accept the curse and leave the planet in 7 days? Because, it's mentioned in numerous places how, due to his expert management and qualities as a pure devotee, the people were really dependent on that, and he was setting an example for them. And this really cut all that short. So it seems maybe a little bit selfish. So I wanted to just go back to that.
Okay. Maharaj Parikshit, he believed in a succession plan. In Vedic culture, there was a succession plan in place. It wasn't that he was just abandoning the kingdom and it was just going to go to hell because there was nobody to replace him. There was a I believe it was his son, was prepared, was already trained up. So, because this is intelligent management. Management just doesn't mean to become expert at what you're doing. A good manager is working hard to replace himself. According to modern management systems, a good manager is training others. And I never went to school about this or anything, but this is common sense. A good manager is training others to take over in the inevitable time, old age, disease, death, or just wanting to do something else. So Maharaj Parikshit was not irresponsibly renouncing. He was responsibly renouncing. And of course, he was guided. The king doesn't act alone. The king is guided by a council of Brahmins. So I was mentioning this in class the other day. I don't know if you were there. I was saying that there probably was controversy in the kingdom. On one hand, the citizens were going, we can't do without you. Don't renounce. And the Brahmins are saying, there's actually something happening spiritually coming ahead. We're not sure, but go for it. The Lord is calling you. So it wasn't that he only considered, because the king never considers anything himself. The king is always surrounded by Brahminical advisors, those who are spiritually attuned. But the citizens, they probably were thinking like you're saying, he's the greatest example. He's like our father. He's like our well-wisher. He's our provider. And don't leave. It was up to the citizens, the average citizen. Maharaj Parikshit would have never heard the Srimad Bhagavatam. I'm speculating, just philosophically speculating, that if he would have been held back by those who wanted him, then something glorious, which was unseen, never would have taken place. So he renounced, but he didn't leave the citizens without protection because of succession planning. I went to one lecture in Mayapur. It was a workshop on succession planning, and the teacher was a very nice devotee from somewhere in the world. You know, we go to Mayapur, you meet people from everywhere. I think he was from Malaysia or anyway. He was giving this talk and explaining. He says succession happens no matter what, but do you want to have it planned? You want to be prepared for it, or you just want to have it haphazardly? He says, our philosophy is Janma Mrityu Jana Vyadi. And every single leader in our society preaches that death could come at any moment. Look at Maharaj Parikshit as a perfect example. You know, death could come at any moment. He says, even though the leaders sometimes are preaching this regularly, when it comes to their position, they don't believe it. So I mean, it wasn't like attacking anybody, but it was just observing the fact, the importance of planning for the inevitable, which means to plan, to manage in such a way that you're replacing yourself, that you're teaching others how to do what you do, so that things can go on. So, did I answer your question, or did I go on a diversion? Did I go on a side road? Yes, we have our guest here. I'm forgetting your name, but you can please ask a question. Yeah, well, the microphone helps.
Microphone. You know, I've had a microphone in my hand like maybe 3 times in my whole life. So,
Okay.
Okay. So this is from Canto 10, Chapter 54, Text 47. When we identify ourselves with the material body, we lose our power to understand the soul. Okay. Could you comment on what we need to understand about the soul?
Okay.
Maybe that's too hard.
No. That's a very nice question. I really appreciate it. So, thank you for the question. So, to understand things that we cannot see, it takes a different kinds of intelligence than analyzing or trying to understand things with our eyes. Generally, we try to learn what what is it? Seeing is believing. You ever heard that? It's a common saying, right? Seeing is believing. But actually, there's so many things that the world believes in that they don't see. How? By hearing. Do you believe in Hawaii? Yeah, you believe that it's there, right? Have you ever been there? No, you haven't been there. So you've heard. So similarly, by the authority, do you believe in atoms, protons, neutrons? Yeah, you've never seen them, but you've heard from authority that they exist. So similarly, the soul is the most subtle element, cannot be seen. According to, if you try to understand the dimensions of the soul, according to the Vedic literatures, if you took the very tip of your hair, very tip, as small as you could cut, and you divide that into 10,000 pieces, maybe that would estimate the size. So you can't see the soul. So we have to hear from authority about the soul. The soul is part of the Supreme Souls. Krishna is known as Param Atma, which means the Supreme Soul. And a living being is called Atma, the soul. So it's spark, just like a fire and spark of a fire. Spark of a fire is part of the fire, but it's infinitesimal. So similarly, the soul by nature is infinitesimal, very, very small, but it has the same qualities of God. And therefore, who would be a better authority about the soul than the Supreme Soul? So when we hear from Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, or we hear from God himself about the nature of the soul, which is what you're trying to understand, then that saves a lot of time. And Krishna says, Najayate Mrite Vakadasha. He says, for the soul there's never birth nor death, nor having once been does he ever cease to be. He's undying, eternal, ever-existing, primeval. He's not slain when the body is slain. So that gives some indication of the soul. And then, as you read further, there's so many very beautiful verses where Krishna describes the nature of the soul as being Sat, Chit, Ananda, eternal, full of knowledge and full of bliss. That's the nature of the soul. So to come to realize the nature of the soul, there's a process. It's like if you want to get pure water from a muddy stream, what do you have to do? You have to filter the water until you have pure water. So similarly, the soul, we are by nature spirit soul, but we're covered with the dirt of this material body, which is what you quoted there. When we identify with the material body, we're never going to be able to understand the soul. So to filter out the identification of the material body is the process of bhakti yoga. By chanting, Lord Chaitanya has given us this chanting, Chetudarpana Marjana, by cleansing the dust, the dirt that is covering the pure energy of the soul, then we'll understand our nature of being a pure, blissful part, servant of God, and that our happiness lies in rendering service. So when we chant the Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Rama, Hare Hare, that is that's the most powerful means in this age of cleansing the dirt from our consciousness so that we'll be able to understand our soul and our relationship with soul. Not that we just understand ourselves with the Supreme Soul. Not that we just understand that we're spirit soul. That is called in Sanskrit, Aham Brahmasmi, I am spirit. That is possible. We were talking about it in class, that the yogis, by torturing their bodies, by denying their senses, they'll actually get on a spiritual platform, but not on the highest spiritual platform. When our senses are engaged in the service of the master of the senses, which is God, then we will experience our real nature as being a blissful servant of God. Does that does that anywhere approach the question that I did you ask? So, maybe somebody could answer. Anybody have an answer for the question? Can you describe what the soul looks like? Bhanuvata Prabhu, or answer it.
Which is like Prabhupada explains that even a child can experience the soul. You know, just like we don't want to die. Why is that? That's because we don't die. We're just misidentifying with the body. So the qualities of the soul we're already experiencing in our life because we are souls. And the nature of the soul is it's full of unending happiness, full of spiritual knowledge, and eternal life. So in Krishna consciousness, we realize that, you know, it's our tendency as human beings. We want to experience life through our senses. So we think, you know, what does this soul look like? But, you know, it's so difficult to conceive of something that's subtle like that. Well, the seeing, you know, the best way to really understand about the soul, because when, by nature, as Nityodita Prabhu is saying, by nature we're servants of God, and we're part and parcel of God. So we're just like a small drop of water from the ocean, which is God. So we're the same as God in quality, but we're different in quantity. So when we awaken that service mood, and when we engage in this process of Krishna consciousness, and we follow these regulative principles, because in that verse you mentioned, Prabhupada said that, because of too much attachment for the body, we can't understand what the soul is. So we have to learn to apply ourselves in Krishna consciousness, and then the nature of the soul we actually begin to experience. Not just, see, because the power of our vision is very limited. When we try to understand about spirit, we have to awaken our internal senses, our spiritual senses, and then we can perceive the soul and experience it in our daily life. And one of the first things that happens as we experience it is that we experience freedom from anxiety, freedom from stress, and we start to experience this happiness that's almost addictive. And we want more and more. We want to associate with devotees. We want to, serve Krishna in different ways. We want to chant his name. So the best way to see the soul or to see God is to engage in the process that allows us to...
There's three types of bodies. There's the gross body. That one you can see. You can see everybody's gross. There's the subtle body. A subtle body is composed of mind, intelligence, and false ego. Can you see intelligence? Can you see the mind? Can you see the ego? No. Okay, so that's a subtler element. And it's explained that even subtler, even finer than the subtle body is the soul. But one thing Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that's important, and that says that never was there a time when I, nor you, did not exist, nor in the future shall you cease to be. So what he's probably points out in the purport, that although the soul is invisible to the material eyes, it is a person. The soul is a person, eternally is a person. And that personality of the soul can be realized when one engages with the present gross body and subtle body in the eternal occupation of the soul, which is devotional service. It's called Sanatana Dharma, the eternal occupation of the soul. When engage in that process under the direction of a spiritual master, then you'll be able to see yourself in your eternal form in relationship with Krishna in the spiritual sky, and then all your questions will be answered. When you get to that stage, you'll have no more doubt. Madhuri.
I just want to thank you for a nice class. You definitely spoke to me. One point, because you said to respect death, and I was reflecting that, and also respect the decisions of the people's decision, which might be sometimes difficult to respect, but make the acceptance and respect of others' decisions. And in case of Venkas Prabhu, it's very difficult for all of us, but that could be part of respecting as well. Yeah. And another thing, there's a couple of more. Like the ability, how much we can tolerate, right? But I don't want to start another discussion.
How much we can tolerate?
You said we need to tolerate, it's true. But there is sometimes limit of how much we can tolerate. That's another point. Of course,
the ability to tolerate increases when one is fixed on the mission. Use Prabhupada's life as an example. How much he had to tolerate because he was fixed on the mission. So when we're not fixed on the mission, we don't know what our mission or our service is, then the mind can become the dictator. I'm supposed to be Pajari, but actually I don't really feel like offering artik today. Oh, I don't feel like it. So how much should I tolerate my mind, or I'm not feeling well? But if you think, this is my service to Krishna, this is my service to Guru, this is my mission in life, then you get strength to tolerate. But when there's a weakness in understanding what our purpose is, what our mission is, then we can become weakened. Of course, one has to ultimately use their own intelligence to understand what is the will of the Lord.
I'm talking about that sometimes we shouldn't tolerate. There are things which we should not tolerate, and if we are in the position, we need to take action.
Yes, if one
so
is
that's
being...
what I'm referring.
Oh, you're referring to being abused?
Whatever is
abused?
not proper, things which are not proper should not be tolerated. That's what I'm referring to.
Well, there's just because one is tolerating something doesn't mean that they can't be simultaneously working to change. That's something in the world. Like Prabhupada, he had to tolerate the ignorance when he came to America. He had to tolerate living with people in the beginning that were completely uncultured, that had meat in the refrigerator, or so many things, and they didn't understand anything. And Prabhupada's whole way that he dealt with us was to teach culture by his example, and having respect. Somebody was telling the story the other day about how a devotee touched a typewriter, was on the ground with his foot, and Prabhupada chastised him because it was disrespect toward something that was being used in the service of the Lord. So that was like a revelation for that devotee, because in an uncultured society, everything is impersonal and it doesn't really matter. So increasing respect towards Krishna's energy, that's another level. Not just living beings, but Krishna's, that might not be a living being, but Krishna's energy. How Prabhupada would handle things, would be like almost mystical, because he had respect for Krishna's energy. So increasing respect all the way around, like that. One last, well, not last, but one other comment.
Thank you. I just wanted to add that quote, that tolerance cannot be faked.
Tolerance cannot be faked.
Yeah. You can't fake tolerance cannot be faked. And then I can't remember which purport it is. Maybe somebody knows and can remind me. But in Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada says, just kind of along the lines of what you were saying, but I really like this quote. And my Guru Maharaj, his name was Keshava Bharati Maharaj, told me this so many times, that the best training for the mind is to train it to constantly think of doing good for others. Okay. And to the degree we could do that, then we can develop these qualities like tolerance and, forgiveness and things like that. Just wanted to add that.
So that's a mission that anyone could adopt, right? I mean, there's missions like, I'm going to start this institution, or I'm going to support this, but this mission that you just gave, that I'm going to do good to others, that's a personal mission statement for any human being, is what you're saying. And once you have that, as somebody's of that mentality, then good qualities will naturally develop. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yes, and to the degree that I was thinking earlier about humility is not to think less of yourself, but to think of yourself less. In that kind of way. To what degree I'm thinking actually of others, even in just little interactions, that degree I can actually develop, these kind of qualities. But it's the same thing, but that's kind of what I was thinking.
Thank you for that. Any other questions, comments? Monique? Challenging. All right.
Because what to do for those that are suffering?
And
it's easier said.
Ask it so everybody can hear it.
Yeah, you can hear me. Okay. So think about what you're saying. What you're saying is correct, but it's easier said than done. You know, that's why we have all that we do as in Seva. So how to build that tolerance and how to help those that are actually suffering. Because in order to have that humility, you know, you have to work on yourself in order to understand, to think of others. You can't think of others when you have a lot going on inside.
As
So I
long
wanted to
as long
know
as,
his-
long, as long as one is pursuing sense gratification as their goal of life, then it's very hard to think of the welfare of others.
Exactly. So I just
Yeah.
wanted to hear his
Okay.
interpretation to that. Okay. Okay.
So
You're
let-
saying it's
Let's
better
let's
to
let's stop the
close
class here, you guys. If you just start having one conversation with him, then you can continue it afterwards. Get the clarification. Okay, so it's Dandavat. Grantaraj Bhagavatam. Ki Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.